I never thought the day would come when my own children would look at me as if I were a stranger in their lives. I raised them with everything I had, with every bit of strength my heart and my hands could offer. I held them when they were sick, stayed up countless nights when they cried, and prayed for them with every breath in my body. And yet, one afternoon, as the autumn light poured through the curtains of my small living room, I found out something that made my heart crumble in silence. The will, the one that their father and I had carefully planned for, the one that was supposed to secure fairness and love even when we were gone, had been changed. Not just changed, but changed without me, hidden from me, as if my opinion or my very existence did not matter anymore. It was not through a direct confession, nor through a respectful conversation, that I came to know. No, it slipped out from a careless whisper when I overheard my eldest daughter talking on the phone. She thought I was asleep in my room, but I heard her voice. "Well, it's already settled," she said. "Mother doesn't need to know the details. We did what had to be done." Those words, so sharp, so dismissive, sank into me like cold water. My hands trembled as I held on to the arm of the chair, and I tried to convince myself I had misheard. But deep down, a mother always knows, and I knew at that moment they had deliberately kept me away from something that belonged as much to me as it did to them, the legacy of the life their father and I had built together. I felt betrayed, not for the money or the property, but for the lack of respect, the lack of honesty. How could the children I raised in truth choose to hide the truth from me? That night, as I lay on my bed, I stared at the ceiling, the silence of the house pressing on my chest. Memories flooded me, my children, as toddlers, running barefoot in the garden, calling for me with their bright voices, their laughter, their tears, all of it still so alive in my mind. I had always believed that no matter what, we would face life together as a family. But what I saw now was different. I was no longer the center of their circle. I had become an outsider. I did not speak of it immediately. Days passed as I carried this weight quietly, pretending nothing was wrong. I watched them when they visited me, the way they smiled and spoke kindly, as though nothing had been hidden. They kissed my cheek, brought me groceries, asked how I was feeling. But underneath their tenderness, I saw the careful avoidance, the way they never mentioned their father's will, the way they quickly changed the subject if anything related to money or inheritance came up. And I wondered, were they protecting me, or were they protecting themselves? Was this silence meant to shield me, or to shut me out? The truth hurt more than I can describe. It wasn't about the inheritance itself. I have lived my life simply and never desired riches. What cut me open was the fact that they made a decision without me, behind me, as if my thoughts, my sacrifices, my very existence no longer carried any weight. Do you know what it feels like, after decades of pouring your soul into your children, to realize they see you as someone to be bypassed? It is like being erased while still alive. I thought about confronting them, about asking, why? Why would you hide this from me? But each time I rehearsed the words in my head, I imagined their faces, the irritation, the dismissive answers, the tired explanations. "Mother, you wouldn't understand. Mother, it was for the best. Mother, let it go." I feared that instead of truth, I would receive only excuses that would deepen the wound. And so, I kept quiet, torn between anger and sorrow. But in my silence, I found myself asking harder questions. Had I raised them wrong? Did I give too much, love too freely, that they thought I would always forgive, always accept, no matter what? Or perhaps they had grown so practical, so caught up in their own lives, that they forgot the sacred bond between us. My heart ached, but even in the pain, I could not stop loving them. For a mother's love does not vanish, even when it is bruised. Instead, it lingers, stubborn and enduring, even when unreturned. One evening, I sat by the window and watched the sun sink beyond the trees, its orange glow softening into night. I whispered to myself, will they always hide from me? The question felt heavier than the silence of the room. Would they keep treating me as someone who no longer needed to be included, someone too old to matter, someone whose voice had no place in the decisions of family? Or would they one day remember that I am still here, still breathing, still deserving of honesty and dignity? The days turned into weeks, and the weight of the secret pressed harder on my heart. I tried to distract myself with small chores, folding laundry, watering the plants, cooking meals I would often eat alone, but the thought always returned, and sometimes, in the quiet moments before sleep, tears would find their way down my cheeks, not for the inheritance, but for the broken trust, for the invisible wall that now stood between me and the children I once carried in my arms. I wanted to believe there was still goodness in their hearts, that perhaps they thought they were sparing me some kind of burden. I wanted to believe they did not mean to hurt me, but belief does not erase the sting of exclusion. It does not change the fact that my children, my own flesh and blood, had chosen to hide something so important from me. The decision to stay silent began to eat away at me more than the betrayal itself. Each day I wore a mask, pretending to be the same mother they had always known, gentle, patient, full of understanding. But behind my smile was a storm I could no longer control. I would hear their laughter when they gathered in the next room, and instead of warmth, I felt a hollow space inside me. I would sit at the table, listening to their plans, nodding quietly, while inside, a voice screamed to be heard. One Sunday afternoon, when the family gathered at my house for lunch, I noticed the way my eldest son, Daniel, avoided my eyes. He had always been the responsible one, the one who promised to take care of me after his father's passing. Yet now, there was a distance in his gaze, a guardedness that had never been there before. My daughter, Sarah, chattered cheerfully about her children, her words spilling like a waterfall, but beneath the laughter, I caught the nervous glances she exchanged with her brothers. And Michael, my youngest, the one who used to cling to me the most, now seemed restless, tapping his fingers on the table, avoiding any topic that might drift too close to what they were hiding. I sat quietly, serving them food, filling their plates, smiling when they smiled, but every gesture felt like a performance. I was the mother they wanted me to be, obedient, silent, grateful. Yet in my heart, I was slowly breaking. I wanted to slam my hands on the table and cry out, "Why do you treat me as if I am blind? Why do you pretend I do not know?" But I swallowed the words with every bite, afraid of what might come if I spoke them aloud. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty plates, the crumbs scattered across the table. My husband's chair was still there, empty since the day he left this world. I touched the wood, worn smooth from years of his presence, and I whispered to him, "What should I do? They are your children too. Would you want me to fight for what we built, or would you want me to let it go for the sake of peace?" My voice cracked as the tears came. I wished he were still here, to share the burden, to guide me. But all I had was the echo of my own heart. The following week, something inside me shifted. I woke up one morning, tired of the silence, tired of the pretending. A mother's love is endless, but it is not voiceless. I realized that by staying quiet, I was teaching them that it was acceptable to erase me, to treat me as though my feelings were not worth considering. And so, I decided I would speak not with anger, but with truth. When Daniel came to visit me 2 days later, I asked him to sit with me. His brow furrowed, as though he sensed something was different. I poured him tea, set the cup gently in front of him, and took a deep breath. My hands trembled slightly, but my voice was steady when I said, "Daniel, I know about the will." For a moment, his eyes widened, and then quickly he looked away. He tried to compose himself, but I saw the flicker of guilt cross his face. "Mother," he began, his tone cautious, "who told you?" "No one needed to tell me," I replied softly. "A mother knows. I heard enough to understand, and I have seen enough in your faces to know the rest." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We didn't want to upset you. It was complicated, and we thought it would be easier this way." "Easier for who?" I asked quietly. "For you, for Sarah, for Michael, or for me, the woman who carried you in her womb, who sacrificed everything for you? Do you truly believe that hiding the truth from me is easier for my heart than facing it together as a family?" His silence was heavy, and in that silence, I felt both vindicated and broken. Finally, he muttered, "We thought you wouldn't understand." Those words cut me deeper than the betrayal itself. Wouldn't understand, as though age had made me foolish, as though my wisdom, earned through decades of hardship and love, meant nothing. I leaned forward, my voice trembling now, but strong. "Do not mistake my silence for ignorance. Do not mistake my age for weakness. I have lived longer than you, seen more than you, endured more than you can imagine. If anyone understands the weight of decisions, it is me. What I do not understand is why my own children chose to treat me as if I were already gone." Daniel's eyes softened, but he said nothing. Perhaps he had no words. Perhaps he could not find a justification that would not sound hollow. In that moment, I realized that confrontation would not bring me the comfort I longed for. The truth was out, but it did not heal the wound. It simply laid it bare. My children had chosen their path, and no amount of tears or words could undo what had been done. When Sarah visited the next day, I told her as well. Her reaction mirrored Daniel's shame, avoidance, attempts at gentle excuses. Mother, we were trying to protect you. We thought it would be too much for you. Too much for me, I asked, my voice quiet but firm. Do you think I am made of glass? Do you think the woman who survived poverty, who buried her husband, who held this family together through storms, cannot handle the truth? You did not protect me, Sarah. You excluded me. Her eyes filled with tears, but she said nothing. She hugged me tightly before leaving, and I held her. But the embrace felt fragile, like paper trying to cover a crack in stone. By the end of the week, I had spoken to all three of them. Each one carried the same guilt, the same attempts to justify what they had done. And though they wept, though they promised they had meant no harm, I knew deep down that something had shifted forever. The bond we once had, unbreakable and pure, now had a fracture that could not be unseen. That night, I sat once again by the window, the moonlight casting shadows on the floor. My heart was heavy, but in the stillness, I asked myself a question. Should I let this bitterness consume me, or should I let it go, for the sake of the love that still remains? I closed my eyes and remembered their childhood, the way Daniel used to run to me with scraped knees, the way Sarah would bring me wildflowers from the garden, the way Michael would fall asleep in my arms, his small hand clutching mine. Those memories were not lies, they were real, and they were beautiful. Perhaps my children had stumbled, perhaps they had lost their way in the complexity of adulthood, but they were still my children. And so, I made a choice. I would not forget what they had done, for forgetting is impossible. But I would forgive, not because they deserved it, but because my heart could not survive on bitterness. Forgiveness does not erase the wound, but it allows the heart to keep beating without poison. Forgiveness is not a single moment, not a word spoken once and done with. It is a decision you must repeat every day, sometimes every hour, when the pain comes back to knock on your heart. I told myself I would forgive them, but when I saw their faces, when I heard their voices calling me mother with tenderness, the memory of their betrayal would return like a shadow. I had to remind myself over and over again that love is heavier than anger, that blood is thicker than disappointment, that to hold on to resentment would only wither what little time we still had together. In the weeks that followed, I noticed subtle changes in them. Daniel began visiting more often, not just with groceries or quick conversations, but with a willingness to sit with me in silence. Sometimes he would bring old photo albums, and we would turn the pages together, reliving moments that time had buried. Sarah, too, came with her children, her laughter a little softer now, her eyes searching mine as if trying to find forgiveness written in them. Michael, my restless one, began to linger after his visits, helping with small chores around the house, staying a little longer than before. They did not speak of the will again, but their actions carried an apology, quiet but sincere, and yet, I still felt the ache. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. It is like a cracked vase, mended perhaps, but the lines will always remain. I wondered if they realized that the inheritance they fought to manage was not the most precious thing I had to give them. It was not the house, nor the land, nor the money. It was the love I carried for them, the wisdom carved into my soul from years of sacrifice and devotion. That was the true inheritance, one no paper could change. One evening, Sarah sat with me in the kitchen while her children played in the next room. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and whispered, "Mother, are you angry with us still?" I reached for her hand, my old fingers wrapping around hers. Anger is a fire, my child. It burns the one who carries it more than the one it is directed at. I cannot hold on to it, or it will consume me. But do not mistake my forgiveness for forgetfulness. I forgive you because you are my daughter, because my love for you is stronger than my hurt. But I will always remember what you did, and I pray you remember it too, so that you never repeat it. Her tears fell freely, and she buried her face against my shoulder like she used to when she was a child. In that moment, I felt the bond between us stitch itself together again, fragile but alive. Days passed, seasons shifted, and I found myself spending more time in reflection. I would sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset paint the sky with its colors, and I would think about life's strange lessons. Perhaps this betrayal was not meant to destroy me, but to remind me that even the people we love most can falter. Children grow, they become adults, and sometimes in their desire to control life, they forget the roots that gave them strength. It hurt to be excluded, but maybe it was also a reminder that my role as a mother was never to hold on to control, but to teach, even through pain. I began to share more stories with my grandchildren. I told them about their grandfather's struggles, about the days when we had nothing but hope, about the nights when we prayed together for a better tomorrow. I wanted them to understand that wealth is not measured in property or inheritance, but in love, honesty, and respect. And as their wide eyes listened, I felt a new sense of purpose. If my children had stumbled, perhaps I could guide the next generation to walk a little straighter. One afternoon, Michael came to me alone. He sat across from me, his head bowed, his voice quiet. "Mother, I'm sorry. I should have said something. I should have stood up, but I was afraid. I thought if I disagreed, it would cause fights among us, and I didn't want to lose my brother and sister. But in keeping silent, I betrayed you too." I looked at him, my youngest, the one who had always been so I placed my hand on his and said, "Courage is not the absence of fear, my son. Courage is doing what is right even when fear is loud. You are young still, and you will have more chances to choose courage. Do not waste them." He nodded, his eyes glistening with tears. In that moment, I saw the boy he once was, clinging to me with trust, and I felt hope stir again in my heart. Over time, I came to accept that my children's choice had carved a scar into my soul. But scars are part of living. They tell stories of wounds survived, of pain endured, of lessons learned. I would carry this scar, but I would also carry the strength that came with it. And so, I chose peace, not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of letting go. I still ask myself sometimes, late at night when the house is quiet, will they always hide from me? Perhaps they will. Perhaps in some ways, they will always shield parts of their lives, thinking they are protecting me, thinking I cannot handle the truth. But I no longer fear that question, for I know now that even if they hide from me, I will not hide from myself. I will live the rest of my days in truth with the truth of who I am, what I have given, and the love I still carry. If my children someday realize the weight of their mistake, I will welcome them with open arms, not with bitterness, but with grace. And if they never do, I will still love them, because that is the way of a mother's heart. The inheritance may not bear my name, the papers may not honor my voice, but my true legacy is already alive in their memories, in their children, in the stories I leave behind. No secret, no will, no betrayal can take that from me. So I sit here now, watching the twilight settle over the earth, and I whisper a prayer, not for riches, not for fairness, but for my children to remember that love is the only inheritance worth keeping. And if they hold on to that, then perhaps all of this pain will not have been in vain. As the months passed, life slowly fell back into its rhythm, though never quite the same as before. My days were filled with small routines, watering the flowers in the garden, baking bread that filled the house with a familiar warmth, folding laundry with careful hands. Yet behind each task lingered the quiet awareness that something had changed forever between my children and me. Still, I learned to carry it differently. Pain has a way of softening if you allow it to transform rather than harden your heart. I began to see their betrayal not as the end of our bond, but as a difficult chapter in a longer story, our story, one that held both light and shadow. And in those shadows, I searched for meaning. I remembered my own parents, long gone now. They too had made choices I did not always understand. I remembered the times I had been hurt by them, by their silence or their decisions. Yet, in time, I forgave them, realizing they had acted from their own fears, their own limited understanding. Perhaps my children's actions were no different. They were not malicious by nature. They were only human, flawed, fearful, trying to protect themselves from discomfort, even if it meant hurting me. One evening, I invited all three of them to dinner. I cooked their favorite meals, the recipes they grew up with, the flavors that carried the essence of their childhood. As they sat around the table, I looked at them not as adults who had wronged me, but as the children I once held close. I saw the lines of worry on Daniel's forehead, the tiredness in Sarah's eyes, the restless energy in Michael's hands. They were no longer the innocent children I remembered. Life had shaped them, hardened them in places, and yet they were still mine. After dinner, I cleared my throat and said softly, "I want you to listen to me tonight, not as your mother, but as a woman who has lived a long life." They quieted, sensing the weight in my tone. "I know what you did with the will," I continued. "I know you thought it was easier to keep me out, that you believed I would not understand. And yes, it hurt me more deeply than you will ever know. But I want you to hear this. Money, property, inheritance, these things are not the true wealth of a family. They can be divided, hidden, stolen, but they are nothing compared to the wealth of love, respect, and honesty. You may inherit the land, the house, the savings, But if you lose integrity, if you lose the bond of trust with one another, then you have inherited nothing at all. I looked at each of them in turn, my eyes resting on their faces. One day, when I am gone, you will look back on these years, and you will not remember the documents you signed, the shares you claimed. You will remember my voice, my laughter, the meals we shared, the lessons I taught you. That is the inheritance you cannot alter, the one no lawyer can draft or erase. Do not take that lightly. The room was silent. I could see the shame in their eyes, the regret they struggled to express. Sarah reached across the table and took my hand. "Mother, we were wrong," she whispered. "I see it now. We let fear guide us, and in doing so, we hurt you. Can you ever forgive us fully?" I squeezed her hand gently. "Forgiveness is not about deserving. It is about choosing love over bitterness. I forgive you because I cannot bear to live in anger. But I pray you learn from this, so that you never treat anyone else with the same disregard." Daniel's voice cracked as he spoke. "I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I was only protecting myself from facing difficult conversations. I am sorry, Mother." Michael's eyes were wet as he nodded. "I should have spoken up. I won't make that mistake again." I smiled faintly, though tears blurred my vision. "Then perhaps this wound can become a lesson, not just for you, but for your children as well. They will watch how you treat me, and one day, they will treat you the same. Remember that what you sow in me, you will reap in them." It was not a perfect resolution. The scar remained, as all scars do. But that night, something shifted. They began to see me not just as an old woman to be managed, but as a living soul, with wisdom, dignity, and a voice. And in that recognition, I felt a quiet healing begin. As time went on, I spoke more openly about my life. I told them stories of my childhood, of the hardships their father and I faced when we were young. I shared the mistakes I had made, the regrets I carried, the triumphs I cherished. In speaking, I reclaimed my place in the circle of our family, not as a figure to be silenced, but as a voice to be heard. I began to notice their small changes too. Daniel asked for my advice more often, not just about family matters, but about life. Sarah listened with patience when I shared my thoughts, her eyes no longer avoiding mine. Michael, ever restless, began to sit longer, to soak in my words as though realizing time was slipping through his fingers faster than he wished. And I thought to myself, perhaps this is what the wound was meant to teach us all, that silence is not protection, that secrets only divide, that love demands truth, even when it is hard. Still, there were nights when the old question would rise in me: will they always hide from me? I do not think that question will ever leave completely. But now, I no longer ask it with fear. Instead, I ask it with acceptance, for hiding is a human flaw, a way we protect ourselves from discomfort. And perhaps, in their own way, they believed they were sparing me. I cannot change that part of them. What I can change is how I respond. I will not hide from them, nor from myself. I will live in truth, in love, until my last breath. One day, I hope they will understand the full weight of what they did. And when that day comes, I hope they remember not the pain it caused, but the grace with which I chose to carry it. That will be my final gift to them. As I sit here tonight, the house quiet around me, the stars glowing faintly beyond the window, I feel a sense of peace. Life has taught me many lessons, some gentle, some harsh. This one, though painful, has reminded me of what truly matters, not the inheritance on paper, but the inheritance of the heart, not the property we leave behind, but the love we nurture while we are still here. If my children walk away with anything from me, let it be this truth: love is the only treasure worth fighting for, the only legacy worth leaving, the only inheritance that will never fade. And so, I close my eyes, whispering a prayer for them once more, not for wealth, not for success, but for wisdom. Wisdom to love honestly, to live truthfully, to honor the family bond with the respect it deserves. For if they learn this, then my story, with all its wounds and healing, will not have been in vain.